Hello and welcome back for another episode of the Activation Hour. I'm your host, Melissa D. White. And as usual, we're tuned in for season 2, the season of unlearning. And it has been quite the journey as you, my Activation Nation, has been on this ride with me of self-discovery, dealing with issues that affect us while we're trying to develop our purpose at work and in the world. And so this episode, we're focusing on an issue that's a little hard for a lot of people to address or even discuss, but it's necessary. During this season, and as we're filming this episode, the world is starting to open back up after we've been in quarantine or sheltering in place. And so there's so many dynamics to what has happened. There are people who have lost loved ones, and loss is even bigger than, say, a physical death. And I thought it was very important that we address the pain that we feel and how to get back to being at peace, even through the pain, and still walking out your purpose. Oftentimes, we're expected to still perform and act normal like everything's okay. Many of us have grieved through social justice issues or social injustice issues that have happened. We've grieved through the loss directly or indirectly of just seeing people suffering in social media and in the news. And the political climate has touched us all in one way or another. So it's so important we take a moment and have a self check-in today. This episode, we're checking on our strong friends to make sure we give you a moment of peace, clarity, and some tools to get there with our expert today, Cortne Lee Smith. Cortne and I definitely are no strangers to one another, as she is a dynamic coach in her own right. And so I wanted to make sure she comes to tell her story of not just overcoming grief, but developing healthy relationships, even in difficult times. Cortne herself understands that even through those trials, that peace is very much possible through your pain. She's a student of numbers, an instructor of law, and a woman that lives by love. She's also another fellow host in her own right, as she hosts the Relationship Mechanics Show, and she and her husband also give amazing relationship advice and tools so you can pull in that service station of relationships and refuel to be healthy in that department. As a wife again, a widow who married a widower, she's an example of love after love, living fully, loving, and unconditionally. She's the relationship/life coach and grief specialist that empowers those who are left behind to thrive with the loss of a loved one. COVID actually birthed a platform for her to enact with healthy grief conversations in a variety of ways, enabling one to leave comments and receive feedback. So this will be an interactive episode. Whether you or someone you love is struggling in this season, Cortne's here to help with that. She educates people to move beyond could have and should have into what will be the new normal. As the host and producer of the Master Relationship Mechanics Show, check her out. You can see the show notes for more details. So today, we're going to find peace in the pain. You're tuned into the Activation Hour. Hey, Cortne, how are you? So, welcome to the Activation Hour. I want to give my audience a little backstory. So, Cortne and I know one another from my beginning days. I think we may have started our shows around the same time in 2017. Is that right?
I started in 2016.
2016. Okay. You got a year on me, but we started together at the time it was 108 Praise Radio. So if you guys didn't know that, the Activation Hour podcast actually started as a radio show. So she's definitely a sister in media, a sister in coaching. And I've seen her serve so tremendously through her story. I've just what she has done to transform her pain into a platform to serve other people is astounding. And so, Cortne, I want to welcome you, especially when you answered the call and said, "Hey, our audience needs help," and you said, "I'm there." So, thank you.
I thank you for inviting me here. And like you said, this is the season. We really need to talk about it. And I think people have gotten so caught up on physical death, they ignore the pain that people are emotionally going through and mental, that struggle that is there. So we are here, and you have a platform that actually express always what is going on and what people need to be tuned into to make that movement for us to always have something where we're, like you say, activating yourself, not becoming stale, not becoming stagnant where you are.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So, this season has been it has hit people in a way I didn't even expect. I share very transparently. It came from my personal place of there were a lot of things I thought I knew about myself, about my relationships, about business before COVID. And I think we all woke up, right? And one of those things is I not only saw it with myself, but with other people about we were grieving and maybe didn't even realize it, that there were signs we were acting out in a different way. For me personally, I went into overdrive. So Cortne, like where some people may have an onset of depression, I don't really have a word for what it was, but like I would not sleep. It was like a sense of I'm young, I got too much to live for. I just want to do everything I can do. And I just, I don't know. It was this weird thing. And so what have you experienced, maybe personally or through some of your, people in your community in this season that are really signs of grief and we don't know it?
Well, one thing, you use that word new normal, and I want to let people know I didn't just pick that up in this season. People have coined that as kind of cliche right now. It's something that we're going through, but the new normal is real. And I think that's the key, because see when you're talking about that overdrive, that anxiousness, hey, my life is not, promised kind of thing. Hey, I need to start living my life fully out. In reality, we should have been doing that all along. In reality. But I believe when anytime something comes along that brings about a dramatic change, what happens is we go into dramatic mode. We go into dramatic mode instead of sitting back and trying to analyze. Because a lot of times we go into dramatic mode because, like you say, we don't want to deal with the person that's inside of us. And that's what I've really realized with most of my clients. We have to sit down and say, what is the real issue with you? What is the root that's causing you either to not sleep, to either get so busy that you're trying to avoid the real issue? You sleeping through the real issue, you eating through the real issue, drinking through the real issue, all of those addiction and abusive behaviors. And a lot of people say that's grief. That's actually negative grief. That's negative grief because we all are grieving every day. We all grieve every day. There is something that we did not get our way every day. Every day there is a semblance of grief, something that we have to let go of every day. But it is how we let go of it that empowers us. If we are able to let go of it and understand it never was ours to begin with, it was just a temporary phase. Even all of this stuff going right around in COVID season is really a reality check for us. What have we prioritized in our life that we think belonged to us anyway? We thought our time belonged to us. We thought our schedule belonged to us. We thought our interaction with people belonged to us. And we took all of those things for granted. So in the season of when we're dealing with a new normal, we need to learn how to readjust our priorities. And that is the biggest thing that death, any type of death teaches us, any type of relationship loss teaches us. We have to reprioritize, because if we don't that reprioritize and we get stuck in those things that pass along as still being the priorities. And I mean, I've been through health loss, I've been through job loss, relationship loss. And so that's what I'm saying. Loss can hit you in different ways. A lot of people don't actually get caught up in the physical death. They get caught up in like the financial piece that's missing in that relationship. So different components that hit along the way. And I know COVID has brought about every last one of them. People are hurting financially. People are mentally hurting. People are socially hurting. So
Yeah.
all of those things are being brought out. But the thing is, what was in us that made us think we were really in control of those things to begin with?
Wow. That's a powerful question. What was in us to make us think we were in control of it in the first place? So, I guess my follow up to that, Courtney, is can grief really be the realization that I don't have control? So, you're grieving the loss of control of a situation?
You're grieving the loss of control. You're grieving that it wasn't your way, that our will is not ours to begin with. So yeah,
Mm,
so grief is the first step of saying, hey, I didn't have control over that. But how you get to a healthy place is you saying,
mhm,
okay, I accept I don't have control over that. But the
mhm.
most people, the problem is they're still in the place of still trying to get back in control over it. And that's how you get caught in a place of complicated grief. There are actually 12
Mm.
million people that go through complicated grief every year. That's a lot of people. 12
Wow.
million people. So
Wow.
it's a lot of people who just get stuck and like, I still got control. I can
Mhm.
still change my circumstances. I can still change my situation. But there is a place we have to say, okay, this I have to let go of.
So, that's a new term for me, and I'm sure for many listening, complicated grief. So, I guess when I asked the question about symptoms of grief, is there a such thing or opposite of complicated and say maybe healthy grief stages or a healthy way to go through that?
Yes, yes. And I think when people say grief, they think grief is bad. Grief is something that we all have to go through. Death is inevitable. I mean, that's in scripture. It's a time for everything. So it's
Mhm.
the time for dying. So it does not mean just physical death. It means it is a time for things to pass away and move to the new. And that's scripture for us. So if you realize that, that means you can begin to take steps into that new. And that's not don't mean you're gonna run in there to next week. It just
Mhm.
means that you're making progressive steps every day. And
Mhm.
when you can tell that somebody has got caught in a complicated grief place, it begins to affect their health, because it
Okay.
becomes something that is like very heartbroken, you know, a depression, like you say, a place where you can't sleep is because it is starting to affect your everyday physical, mental space.
Mm.
A place where
Mhm.
I can't have a conversation with God. I can't pray to him anymore. A place where I can't answer the phone anymore because I don't know how to have a conversation with people. The
Mhm.
biggest part that people have when people stop talking, when people go silent, and I don't mean just verbally talking, when people stop expressing themselves in a way to let you know that they're hurting, when that all
Mhm.
stops, that's when you know that person is no longer progressing.
Wow. This is such, and I see our audience responding here as we're streaming this to our live Facebook and YouTube community. Many people, we've seen a huge increase in virtual therapy. We've had several therapists, counselors, psychotherapists here on the show. And I've had people even ask me, Courtney, well, isn't your show about like business and personal development? And I'm like, absolutely. So, but if you have a person who's unwell, it spills over into those other areas. So, when you talk about those signs like overeating, oversleeping, or not sleeping enough, how can we, I guess, lovingly or gently maybe intervene or help a loved one or friend we see maybe exhibiting some of these things?
I actually I have this little ebook with these little tips on what to
Okay.
say, what to say to people who are grieving.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times we tell people in time things will get back to normal.
Right.
And that is a
Right.
tremendous lie that we tell people. I know some people say lies,
Mm.
that's a word, we're going to call it a story, whatever y'all want to fascinate that word to be. But it's an untruth that is not, things will never get back to normal. And that's the key. If we tell people, I know things are going to be different, a lot of times a light will come on for people and say, okay, I don't need to struggle so hard to get back to what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I need to start identifying what is new. And the thing is, a lot of us don't know ourselves when we lose a job. A lot of us don't know ourselves when our situations changed around us. A lot of us don't know when we lose our title of wife or husband or mother or daughter. When we lose those titles and those positions and those roles in people's lives, we lose a piece of ourselves. And so how do we define ourselves and begin to identify ourselves as a new person? So when you're talking about in a workplace, you become a new employee. You are becoming a new employee. So the thing is, we have to be observant and determine who has that new employee become, because their priorities change.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm telling you, my priorities changed because my whole thing was about, hey, my time is way more valuable now. So the thing is, our priorities change. So you have to realize who this new employee is, what's driving that new employee, and how do you cultivate that new employee to be within your workplace? How does all of those pieces go together?
That's good. I love the way you put that, because we're trying to, and I put it up here for you guys to reference what Cortne just said. Don't struggle to get back to what was. Discover the something new. So it is a sense of a piece of you that has died away, and now this is your opportunity to, I guess regenerate or become the new thing in the new place. And that's scary in and of itself, because it's the unknown. All of it's unknown. So you have the person trying to figure out who's the new me in this situation, and then you have everyone around them trying to figure out, how do I receive, accept, and treat this new version, I guess, if you will, of you. Talk about that a little bit more, because that was very like eye-opening for me to look at it that way.
For the person on the other side, like if you were my boss and you're like, okay, I know something is going on with Cortne. Now the determination is, if you come to me, make a decision on why you're asking the question and what you're going to do about it if I give you an answer. But see, a lot of times people aren't ready to do something when the employee gives the answer. My first question is, did you give me enough time off to deal with and sit it out, to really deal with it? Where most jobs don't. They don't give you enough time to sit it out. And I'm gonna reach back to the Bible, because that's where my foundation is. We're supposed to be given those 30 days. It's 30 days we need to sit it out. Most of us don't do that. We go back to work, we run it, and we try to just get back into whatever it was. We try to get back to our old normal. If we actually truly gave ourselves that time, we would have a time to start writing out what we need in order to be able to function in this new space. Because you might be oversleeping because now you're performing as two people. You might be oversleeping because, it's different things and different dynamics that are going on. You might be oversleeping because you live in a neighborhood now that's rioting. You're in fear of what's going to happen to you. So it's different things. Instead of just saying, hey, you late to work every day. Hey, maybe we need to make some readjustments if that's possible. Hey, can I start waking night shift so I don't have to hear the rights? Hey, can I come in an hour later? Hey, these things, if you want, that's why I say, as an employer, be sure you're asking the questions for the right reasons. And that's the thing. Are you asking because you just being a curious cat.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time, that's what we're having those conversations for, because I want to know, but I don't want to do nothing about it to change the situation.
Well, if I can touch on that, here's my disclaimer to what you said is in the workplace, HR has, whatever the leave, bereavement, sick leave, your FMLA policy, or even what are the contingencies for mental health. Like oftentimes people think sick leave or that time off or short-term disability, whatever the case, whatever you need it for, that is reserved for a physical sickness, need, or death. And it's like, wait, there's so many traumas that we've experienced that really you have time set aside for that too. And albeit I'm not a HR certified expert in that regard, but you're right. Employers have to be very careful and tread lightly in terms of the line of questioning. Definitely show empathy and concern, but some of that questioning could get tricky in terms of, HIPAA laws and privacy and, whatever you choose to share with your employer, but you have that right. And I think when we talk about working through that pain, oftentimes either we don't know what resources are available because we're trying to be strong and won't address or seek or accept the resources, or we know, and again, it's like you said, acceptance, like, oh, well, I'm strong, especially women, especially, Black women and, Black community or community of color, where there's a dichotomy of that. And we've talked about that here on the show. What are the topic is, just peace through the pain or in the pain. And I'll be honest with you, Cortne, when I saw that as one of your topics and we worked through the topic for the show, I had to really sit with the word myself. I was like, peace in the pain. And I understand, the believer in me understands that. But then the humanity, the flesh is like, are you crazy? They don't even go together. Peace and pain, they're two different things. And so because the thing is, you got to go through it. You're going to have to allow yourself to feel it, to address it. How do you have peace when you're literally encountering some of your most painful moments?
And I think people define peace incorrectly, first of all.
Okay.
Because peace is only found within the chaos anyway. Because if everything is good and everything is well, that's not peace. Peace is only when you're going through something that you're able to say that I don't have to understand it to have peace. I don't have to be in control of it to have peace. It does not have to be over for me to have peace. And so those are what we find is peace. Most of us say I can arrive at peace now because I can take a deep breath and because it's all over. No, that's just the end. That means you've made it through the end of the tunnel. That is not peace. Peace doing it is saying, and like you said, the believer in you realize is that because we walk through many pains to get to peace. And it's the same thing in this fleshly mental place. We have to give ourselves permission to say, I don't have to understand this to have peace. But we define ourselves as, I got to know the answer. Whatever the answer is. And it's funny you said that because that is actually the first, another little ebook, I like little ebooks, Release to Have Peace. That is actually out of the 12. That's the first one. The why. The why, because we all want to know why this, why that. And at the end of the day, if we had the answer, does it change the circumstances that we're in? I mean, does the answer change the circumstance? So if you're giving the answer, does the answer give you peace? Because it does not move you out of the situation of the circumstance. So you have to say, I am going to have my peace no matter what. And that's one of the biggest things that we get caught up in our minds. The why is in our mind. And so that little segment is cutting out those thoughts, the why thoughts. Just let them go. You've made yourself deserving of an answer that you'll never get. God didn't tell you he was going to ever give you an answer.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's just simple. And let me say, for you all, if you're listening in and you say this about business, this ain't got nothing to do with God, the world ain't never promised you no answer. So if you want to get that deep and want to say, well, it ain't about God, but it's about God for me. God didn't never promise me he was going to tell me everything. But on the other side, the world never told you they were going to reveal everything. So at the end of the situation, the answer is not going to change your circumstances. So if you change your thoughts to understand that I'm in control of my peace, not my circumstances. I'm in control of my peace and not my circumstances.
Wow.
And for me, I have peace every day. That is a piece of the puzzle that I will never allow anybody to disrupt. Period. For me.
I'm in control of my peace, not my circumstance. And that's true, or whatever side you fall on in terms of your belief system, is that we have very limited control over our circumstances, even when we think we do. We can do everything right, slow down when we drive, check all of our signals, have the car serviced, make sure that we're a defensive driver, go out and an accident occur. You did everything in your control, but can you have peace in a circumstance you had no control over? That's good. Ooh, that's good. Cortne, we're getting some comments and just some thoughts from the audience. Naya shared with us, 2020 has given me the chance to seek counseling 20 years later than I should have, which congratulations to you, Naya, because that is a huge step. I'm grateful this year made me slow down and grieve loss of jobs, relationships, and much more. And I'm sure Naya's not alone. So many people, for the first time, mental health and counseling is being more normalized because everyone is impacted in some way, whether they acknowledge it or not. She also talked about shame. And so I guess that could lead to another question here before we take a break. Can grief and shame go hand in hand?
It can.
How so?
Because a lot of people choose to hide that they're hurt, that they're in pain, because they're worried about how people are going to feel about them.
Okay.
And then a lot of times, just because you lost something, it might not have been in the most pleasant way, so you don't want to discuss it. Hey, I got fired from a job. How many people want to run and tell that? And a lot of people don't want to discuss if their spouse committed suicide or their loved one committed suicide. So the shame of the circumstances of the loss becomes something that we don't talk about. When in actuality, the situation, that means it's gone no matter what. And people shouldn't put so much emphasis on how it happened. Hey, you weren't the first person that was fired. You weren't the first person that somebody in your life committed suicide, that they OD'd. We put too much emphasis on how it happened instead of helping people through what happened.
Cortne, this is amazing. These are just life-changing nuggets that you're giving right now. These are activation moments. Seriously. I mean, this is good stuff. Guys, listen, don't go anywhere. If you're personally being impacted by hearing this, just take a moment and share this episode. Don't be selfish. Share these nuggets and these activation moments with your friends and family too. Hit that share button and go ahead and turn on your notifications. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to take a quick break, acknowledge our sponsors, and then we're going to come back with Cortne and talk more about grief. And like we said, we're not just talking about a physical loss, but how it affects us. I don't want to talk about family dynamics a little bit more. We come right back right here on the Activation Hour. Guys, we're still locked in for this episode about peace in your pain and how you can overcome it. So that's the second part of this topic. It's like if you're in a place of pain, whether it's emotionally, physically, loss of any kind, that there is you can be an overcomer. And Courtney, you hit on something earlier about things like not to say to someone who's grieving, and people they really don't know what to say. So when you talk about, you're laughing because I'm sure you've probably heard some things like, why did you say that? Can you give some more examples when someone's trying to overcome that? Hey, that might not help to say that.
Matter of fact, I'll give you the 5 that I have in the book. I'm gonna give them to you because you still got to read deeper if you want to know a little bit more about them. But basically, the number one we started off with is I know things will be different. So start off telling people that you know things will be different. The dynamics are different no matter what type of relationship it was, whether it's their job, whether it's a family or a friend member. And it might not even be a physical death. It just might be a disconnection with that person. So we're talking about separation, we're talking about divorce, or people you just had to cut off because they were killing you in that relationship. So those things happen. But then secondly, let them know that they do not have to fill the shoes of that what is missing. A lot of us run out and try to get that same person, refill those roles again. That is not necessary. Those shoes do not have to be refilled. And this is for people, if you are a daughter and your mother passed away, don't go try to be your daddy's wife. Stay a daughter. Stay a daughter. Or vice versa. Don't try to be your mother's husband. Stay a son. Be in those roles and don't try to take over because it will become overwhelming. And especially if you have your own family and your own life, now you have become 2 husbands, 2 wives. So just make sure you're keeping those dynamics. So don't try to fill those shoes. Don't push that person into trying to fill those shoes, because a lot of times we're pushing that person into trying to find another relationship so fast. And we're doing that because we don't want to have to deal with them.
Wow.
I can say that is my own personal, that's how I met my husband.
Okay, share a little bit of your own like anecdotal stories. Like tell us your backstory here so they really understand you've lived this.
Yeah. My backstory when I'm talking about you don't have to get those shoes filled is really because my brother-in-law, we used to work together. His brother's wife passed same year, same month that my husband passed, April 2012. So in November, he said, my brother is struggling to get over, and that's what we say wrong, get over his wife dying. People want you to get over it. People want you to stop talking about it, but nobody wants you to get help. So the thing is, he said he was getting on his nerves, and he sent him to come work on my car because my husband is a mechanic. And when he came to work on my car, and my husband has not left since then.
Wow. And you see, I mean, people write stories about it. They've lived it, but you see movies about it like, oh, okay, it's the one with grief and someone comes along and just fill them back up with love. And it's like, that may not be the reality for some people. They may need time. They may not be ready. And you can't rush that process.
Yeah. It's different for each person. And I think, like you said, we're putting people on our timelines of when they need to get back to normal, when they need to stop talking about it. And when we do that, we're actually pushing that person to complicated grief, because we're making them hush. We're making them be quiet. We're making them internalize these things and stay on this ride longer than they have to. Instead of saying, be quiet, say, hey, maybe I don't understand. Maybe I can't experience. And that's number 3. You have to tell people you do not understand what they're going through. We lie to people and say, hey, I've lost my mama and I know what you go. No, my mama's relationship wasn't just like yours.
Right.
So don't put yourself in that person. So you're saying, hey, I got over it in 3 months. You should be able to get over it. I don't want to hear about your mama no more, so don't talk about that. And, let me tell you, mama, if you listening to that, I'm not wishing you to die. That was just an example. I was just, so, hey, mama, your mama, it is.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that because, and again, I want to frame this conversation because I think I'm trying to wake our minds up here in this dialogue today, to be very cognizant. Like and again, I only say I because I can only refer to my own experiences in my family and my household. I didn't realize I was having complicated grief responses to not only COVID, to those, I've lost friends, or those, friends of mine, close friends have lost loved ones, parents, grandparents, spouses, and even, loss of our old lives. Like, I literally grieve the old way. And I know it sounds like it pales in comparison to a physical person being lost, but when you lose your old way of life, like even with children, and I want to talk about that. I told you I want to talk about the family dynamic. You talk about children now not being able to visit their friends. Have some sense of social time, not, being away from their extended family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, whatever that support system or village is like. So then if your child is acting out in a different type of way with their behavior, and you're like, well, I don't know why they act like this and they get on my nerves. Well, you're grieving, your kid is grieving, you're all mad, everybody feeling some type of way, and children are not exempt. Your spouse is not exempt, although they may, not emote or show emotion like you do about it. So can you touch on that, about some of the familiar grief within our own family dynamic?
I believe, and I've seen it, and I've talked to people, and like you see, the first thing is we put so much on how we can get through something, how we cope with something, that we put those same mechanisms and put that same thing in place, and not realizing young people cannot understand these things and saying this is just the way it's going to be. You have to put some things in place. I mean, all I can say, fortunately for me, I got to see my granddaughter every day. So, I mean, that she's a little bitty person, but it is different for the adult who's not getting to see the grandchild. Yes, they're missing in a different way. But when it was part of that little child who you can't explain to them, why am I not getting hugged or getting the candy or getting the kisses? Yeah, I see them on the screen, but I want Graham to come get me. I want her to come hug me, do those routines, especially for a little person that you can't even have that discussion with. In this season, we're going to have to figure out how to socialize still in a place safe outside of this virtual world. We cannot get so stuck that this is going to be our only way of socializing. Yes, COVID is here, but COVID is not meant for us to stay so disconnected that I'll never be able to touch you again. So we're going to have to make some sacrifices as parents, as grandparents, and say, hey, I'm going to have to go see and physically touch my grandchild. Hey, I'm going to have to make some safe play dates. Maybe, hey, they can't see all their friends at once, but hey, let's do something in the yard. Let's set up some play dates. Let us set up some safe environments. What it means is we're going to have to be creative as the adult to let them have that outlet, instead of just telling them to sit down and be quiet because they get on our nerves. We're going to have to be creative. And COVID has sent us into another level of creativeness. That's what it has sent us into, another level of creativeness. Because, yeah, I mean, like kids sitting here all day doing what we're doing. At some point, this is like, okay, I'm bored, because I'm not getting to move to a different classroom. I'm not getting to move to a different atmosphere. I'm not getting to sit and interact with my friends. So there is going to have to be something that we do as parents, grandparents, as people in the community to help set up these avenues for, hey, even if it's not, but sitting in cars and we talking from one car to the other in a parking lot when they don't get out of the car, since they can't necessarily play on the playground equipment because it's not being sanitized or anything like that. But in those environments that we can be creative, and I mean outside of this virtual platform, we are at a place that we need to touch people, get out, hear some music, move around, do some activity. Even if it's doing a nature trail where you got them tied to a rope 6 feet apart from each other, but they're out there, they're tied together, they're interacting. It's something that's fun that is going on. Hula hooping, people don't remember what outside was, where you don't actually have to touch a person, but you can actually have fun. You know,
Yeah.
we might have to go back to, hopscotch, play baseball. Everybody's separated. They're a long ways away on
Yes.
that little diamond.
I
You know,
love these solutions.
yeah, so it's things that where groups can come together and the kids can get out. Hey, it's only 8 little people that need to play baseball, and you don't even have to have a real team for little kids. All they want to do is hit the ball and get out there, yell, shout, get dirty around. So there is a way to do it without having
Mhm.
to have all of the people there to do it. And it requires us to put those same safety measures in place. We as adults, we're getting out doing some of the stuff we want to do.
Mhm.
So we have to make sure that our kids are being allowed to have that same type of outlet.
You said we as adults, we're getting out doing the things we want to do. Not all of us. I want to kind of address the population of adults where some fear has set in. We've experienced that in my family. Mom, don't kill me. But when you hear this, but really that's the dynamic, is that whereas for me, I am like, if there was a scale of being an extrovert, I'm probably on the far end off the scale. Like, I need people. I need that. Like, that feeds my spirit and picks me up to have that interaction. And I mean, I can be alone, but not for too long. And I couldn't wait to get out of this house, even though, but I did all the precautions, the mask, sanitizer, distance. I did the precautions and everything. For my mother, and we talked about this yesterday, she said, it takes me longer to get out of the house because of the mental preparation
Mm-hmm.
of going back into the world. And I've seen that not just for those of us who haven't been personally directly impacted by COVID, but I have dear friends who have contracted and I won't say healed, but they have recovered marginally and still having side effects. So now there's this trauma, if you will, like, there's no way I'm going around people now. And so you talk about, well, the adults are getting out although it looks like the world is open, it's not open to everyone mentally because of fear.
Okay, well, let's go back to what we said in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
If you're struggling to get back to the way it was, and you think that you can control COVID by still staying in your house, unfortunately,
Wow.
COVID can be brought to your house if somebody deliver you groceries on the packaging.
Mm-hmm.
You can stay in your house and still catch COVID.
Wow.
You can catch COVID in very simple ways, just by interacting, putting your hands on the plastic bags that have been brought home, the boxes, the
Yeah.
packaging. So,
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, you can put yourself in a fear of isolation and still end up missing out
Mm-hmm.
on life. So the thing is, you don't have control anyway. Follow the measures that have been put in place and to go out and live. My thing is,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, my whole thing, I expect people to live fully and love unconditionally. That's the whole point of coming through Culture and Me.
Mm.
Living fully and loving unconditionally. If you can do both of those, that means you've achieved what you came to me for. And
I love
that's the
it.
thing. Right now in COVID is nothing but another fear mechanism. Because now don't get me wrong, COVID is real. But if we
Mm-hmm.
go back and think about all the things that have come out to kill us,
Mm-hmm.
every germ, everything. We're talking about the flu. We're talking about emphysema. Everything that has come out in some years, some decade.
Yes.
Of course, we had to get strong enough to be able to fight it.
Mm-hmm.
If we isolate ourselves too long, the moment we get back around people, everybody's going to become sick because we have become germaphobes.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, germs, happen. Like, we went to a place and they gave us plastic silverware. And the thing is, if that plastic silverware didn't come out of a plastic bag, it's just as nasty as the.
It's tough. It's tough. And here's the thing. You talked about rushing people through their grief process, right? It's the same with, I'm not rushing my mother on her transition or process of coming out of the house more socially. So I guess the message I would like to share with our listeners, with our audience, is that if you are encountering a loved one who is struggling in some way or is having those grief symptoms, whether it's, hey, I'm not embracing the news so well, give them some grace.
Yeah, give
Give
them
them
space.
some. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Give them
Yeah,
space
yeah.
to
We push everybody to be just like us, and that is not going to happen. If everybody was just like you, then the world would be just all Melissas or all Cortne. And and the thing is, then you wouldn't have different personalities and different people to deal with. And the thing
Yeah.
is, God lets us see people at different places so that we understand there is that dynamic. It's gonna probably be some people who probably never do certain things ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's just certain things that you'll probably never ever do again
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, okay, I know these people don't clean and they hadn't never cleaned like they supposed to, so I ain't never showing up to this place again.
Right.
And that's a choice that you make. That's not fear.
Mm-hmm.
That is just how you're choosing to live your life in this new space. And we cannot fault people for that. Like
That's the big key.
probably would never take a Uber or a Lyft again.
Yeah.
Because I mean, are you thinking, is this car being sanitized every time I got out, or did the person that got in before me, did they have on a mask? Did they cough? Did they sneeze? You know, you're going through all of those things in your.
Mm-hmm.
So just an example of, hey, that might have been what I did every day prior to COVID. But now I'm in a new space. I'm rethinking, I'm reanalyzing what is best for my life now.
Yeah. As we round out our conversation, Cortne, can you share, and audience, if you have any questions for Cortne, please feel free to drop them in the comments. You can message us. We'll make sure that you get all of this resourceful information, because this is important. I guess when we talk about overcoming, we understand that in the show notes, I would like to include the stages of grief so people understand it clearly, and signs of complicated grief, so you can essentially diagnose that, if you will. But now let's leave them with the tools, Cortne, not to give it all away, because they need to go get your ebooks and your resources, or get talk to Cortne as your coach. But what are some very practical ways to have peace in the pain, and you can overcome the grief to that new way or new life?
Number one is, like we talked about, is you got to release the fact that you need to understand why you're going through it.
Mm-hmm.
The why you're going through it is not as important as what it is taking you to. So
okay.
if you want to ask a question, you say, what am I going to? That means you can plan out a path of what I'm going to. You don't need to plan out a path of where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, release where you came from to get where you're going. So number one, ask yourself, where is it that I want to go? So let's give an example in this COVID. Now, what is it that you want it to look like now for you? Where is it that you want to go? Where you want to go hang out? Where do you want to be around? What is it that you need to have your new place of peace? So design that for you and get there. I have a basic formula that I use with all of my clients, and it is, tell me what your desired outcome is.
Okay.
So everybody that listen to this, we're going to go through a little quick session. Tell me what your desired.
I got my notes. Okay.
So what is your desired outcome, Melissa? What is it that you want? A feeling, an emotion, a space that you need in order that you do not feel overwhelmed with all of these new things that are happening? Give me a word, give me a feeling, give me, what is it? What is your desired outcome?
I want to mentally and physically slow down and maintain peace in every area.
Okay. You want to maintain peace. Okay. That's good. I like maintaining. Maintenance is.
I say maintain because I have found moments and pockets of peace. So I hold on to them dearly, like for dear life. And so I want to be able to maintain it even when new waves of chaos occur.
Okay. So when we determine our desired outcome, we got to think about our situations is the only thing on this list that we do not have control over. So when a situation arises, what is your response? Is it going to be a positive or negative response to get you to your desired outcome? And that is the simplest formula in life that you can have. When the situation comes, what is my response needed to get me to my desired outcome? If I need to shout, if I need to scream, if I need to throw something, whatever it is that your response that is required for you to maintain your peace, that is the response that you do at that moment. See,
Okay.
I just gave you my tool, my formula. So if you can feel that in for yourself, it's your S, is your situation. Is dictated by your response in order to get your desired outcome.
Situation determined by your response to get your desired outcome. I got it. That's the formula, guys. Cortne, you've been amazing. Situation determined by your response to get your desired outcome. Guys, show Cortne some love by going to her website. Cortne, tell our audience where they can connect with you, your resources, and your coaching program to help them have a healthy relationship and healthy life and get through the grief, or rather have peace in the pain.
Yes, I like to call it thriving through grief, because we're going to do more than survive. So if you want to thrive through grief, you can meet me at the relationshipservicestation.com or the Relationship Service Station on Facebook. And on IG, I am the Master Relationship Mechanic. So
relationshipservicestation.com. Awesome. And your IG, the Relationship Mechanic?
Master Relationship Mechanic on IG.
Master Relationship Mechanic. Guys, make sure you go out, support Cortne and her resources. I'm telling you, you have had your own mini session here and tuning in. And don't be selfish. Give this information away. Information is free and we have to apply it. So my hope, my prayer for you is that whatever place you're in, of whether it's you've entered a moment of grief through a loss, you're in the midst of the fog of that grief, or you're finding some waves of walking into your new and accepting that as well. Whatever stage you're in, just know that there are resources and support for you, and that you don't have to go through it alone. Share this episode with someone. Make sure that we keep these conversations going so that we're continuing to unlearn together, as we can, in a healthy way, walk out our purpose at work and in the world. Cortne Lee Smith, thank you so much, my sister, for being on the show with me today. You've been phenomenal. Guys, subscribe to my email list for my Activation Nation so you can get behind the scenes tools and tips. Also, you'll get my show notes from every episode. I literally type them out on my takeaways from every guest we've had, as well as some freebies and giveaways to engage you with our community. You've been tuned in to the Activation Hour. I'm your host, Melissa D. White, and we'll see you on the next episode.